So, some of you may have noticed that there is a growing trend across social media, despite lying dormant for a few years now, that has been exploding virulently of late. And that trend is the trend to silence and block dissenting opinions that don't fit a left-wing cultural and political narrative on said social media outlets. Both Facebook and Google have expressed interest in silencing wrongthink and prioritizing certain approved of facts before contentious facts. For as we all know, some facts are just more real than others, as well as some media outlets are just more real than others. Want an example? Well, just pull up your browser and Google pretty much any newsworthy event that's happened lately, and then type the exact same search line into another outlet, like DuckDuckGo or Bing for fuck's sake, and you can see the disparity in the search results. But I'll save you the legwork of having to do it yourself, so let's just quickly look at this report from Epstein, Robertson, Shepard, and Zhang, 2017, found that in the days leading up to the United States election, both Yahoo and Google searches about said election unilaterally featured articles that were pro-Hillary Clinton, and while both search engines were assessed, the researchers found a large and significant statistical difference in this bias, with a 0.19% bias in the Google search compared to a 0.09% bias in the Yahoo search. Yeah, definitely no skew there or anything. In the past, research on the existence of something called a filter bubble was debated and contested by social scientists. That is, given search engine optimization functions by providing links, advertisements, and content that is best suited for an individual, essentially, advertisers and search engines would create an externally originated selective exposure effect. That is, they would control what you see. As I said a few years ago, yeah, academics were debating whether or not this bubble existed, but I guess to put a permanent hold on their back and forth philosophizing, Google just straight up started enforcing the so-called filter bubble. The difference being that Google became the external arbiter of that bubble's boundary limits. Rather than advertisers, as directed by a user's own searches and interests, no. Google clearly knows what's best for you, and of course, what's best for you is Hillary Clinton and left-leaning politics. Further, YouTube, owned by Google, has of course also entered a new age of censorship, as most of you here are likely aware. Between the pressures of the adpocalypse and media outlets calling for stricter regulations on content resulting in everything from restricted mode, blocking anything that doesn't resemble the mainstream media in the realm of news and politics, no matter how milquetoast or family friendly, to an influx of videos being marked as not advertiser friendly, nor appropriate and requiring an 18+ account, to downright channel strikes, as has been repetitively incurred with Sargon of Akkad, V, Naked Ape, and of course my man Hard Bastard, who received a completely erroneous bullying and harassment strike from the young turds Jordan Charlton merely for calling him out on his lies and bullshit. And before I get one too for calling him a pathetic cuck, as well as Tree of Logic for nothing other than wearing a MAGA hat at a gun rage. All of this where people like Ahmad Musa Jibril are allowed to upload and surely monetize, I'd wager, videos that support jihadis and terrorism. Although these strikes that I have mentioned are frequently removed and have been frequently removed, some remain and ultimately injure the channel, as is in the case with Hard Bastard, who is still saddled with a strike over nothing more than hurting a journalist's feelings. Yes, that's right, friends, in current year, calling a liar and a spade is harassment and bullying. I'm sure it's also racist to say the word spade too, because oh shit! But of all the outlets that have begun this process of self-censoring, none is so visible and salient as Twitter, which has become the face of censorship in social media over the last year or so. From the infamous banning of Milo Yiannopoulos last year, after he did little more than mock Leslie Jones as she was having a public meltdown over what was admittedly a number of users tweeting actually racist messages to her. Yeah, he got banned over nothing. Some of those messages, I will certainly admit, were in poor taste and were racist, but it must be noted that she was not entirely innocent in that incident, not only having tweeted racially oriented messages in the past, but having reported Milo for nothing more than his claim that guess what, everyone gets hate mail, which everyone gets hate mail for fuck's sake. And although he had been suspended numerous times previously, that apparently was the tweet that broke the Bluebird's back, as it was to finally remove the dangerous faggot from the platform. Left and right, well, let's get real at the offset, really only right. It seems that every other week someone is getting at least temporarily suspended or banned from Twitter for something as innocuous as saying the word retard. You hear that, Twitter? Retard! Or at least it seems someone is getting booted from Twitter on the daily so long as their views are even mildly conservative. Hell, let's be even more accurate. If their views are anything right of Marx, we have seen how Twitter seemingly gives priority to verified journalists whose lives apparently revolve around the tweets of Donald Trump and dominate the comment chain. I mean, just take a look at any one of Trump's tweets and watch the pure desperation of the pathetic toads clamoring for daddy to notice them. We have seen evidence of shadow banning for political ideologies that are not approved of, even political beliefs, not even ideology. I mean, right now it appears that Dr. Lehman is also shadow banned on Twitter and he didn't do nothing. We have seen that the terms of service just simply do not apply to everyone equally. We've seen that Twitter is willing to suspend people who are reporting jihadi accounts rather than the jihadi accounts themselves. Yes, we have seen that Twitter has a definitive political agenda. And is it any surprise when one of the site's creators has admitted essentially that free speech was a mistake?
Anime was a mistake.
It shouldn't be a surprise. So of course, you'll be banned for saying a naughty word, for posting some, innocuous interracial gay porn, even if hysterically it is being done to offend those of the very political leaning Twitter seems so wholly in opposition to, or just for making some lowbrow jokes. But you know what won't get you banned from Twitter? Supporting terrorism or being overtly racist, so long as you are on the right side of this ideological battle. Twitter allows users to call for the death of the police, so long as the user is black, because obviously it would be racist to apply the same terms of service regarding threats unilaterally to all users of all races. That is extremely racist. Have you not figured it out yet? Twitter allows ISIS accounts to run wild and continue to disseminate propaganda material that actively call for violence. After all, again, I'm sure it would be racist to tell the jihadis to stop tweeting about death to the infidel. Of course, in contrast, if you're fucking a white male like my boy Stamper, who just received a permanent ban from Twitter for joking that he wanted to personally strangle every Adobe employee, sorry, you've got to go. I'm not saying Stamper didn't break Twitter's terms of service involving death threats. He did, absolutely. The problem is that pro-Black Lives Matter users and ISIS accounts dish out threats on the regular, and not one of the bots that certainly regulate 99% of bans and suspensions bats a digital eyelid at the direct praise and veneration some accounts lay at the feet of terrorist action, but are very quick to kill the account of an animator for being likely reasonably angry with Adobe products and making tasteless jokes. But there has been no greater nor more succinct exemplar of the double standards in censorship at Twitter than the recent case of Bunty King and a miserable, repugnant racist and failed rapper and Kang, Tariq Nasheed, which recently took place. While we're going to go into that unique incident as a sort of case study, the purpose of this video is to explain the psychological principle of reactance, and how removing freedoms is not in the best interest of the corporations, and certainly not in the best interest of the political ideologies they support through these actions and regulations. Because humans inherently seek out the maximization of freedom, and particularly when a freedom previously given has been stripped, it causes a violent backlash, not only from the disenfranchised, but from pretty much all of those who are aware enough to recognize that stripping. Reactance will cause the death of these platforms if they continue down this path, so I believe, provided that those of us who are cognizant of this behavior continue to rile up our own feelings of reactance and fail to fall into a pattern of learned helplessness, allowing these ideas, virtues, and concepts to fall silent and ultimately disappear into the ether of knowledge lost and forgotten. But before we get too deep into the social science nitty-gritty, let's go address this case study I brought up. So the other day, YouTuber Bunty King was permanently banned from Twitter for getting into some beef with Tariq Nasheed, which is easy to do because Nasheed probably thinks that a barista pouring a little bit too much milk into his morning latte is an expression of white supremacy on par with the Holocaust or lynching. But what did Bunty say that was so outrageous to deserve a ban? Not a suspension? Nay, a ban? Let's take a look.
Ended up happening is that the SJW folks on the side of Black Twitter decided to come over and fucking retweet the shit out of it and start saying things like, you can't be racist to white people, or things like, how can you be racist to white people when they invented racism, or some shit like that. I don't remember exactly what was said, but it was fucking stupid. When I read it, I fucking lost brain cells, and here I am, sitting down, triggered as fuck. And that triggers me, by the way. That really does trigger me. When people are so fucking stupid, when they're as stupid as that, White people invented racism? Are you fucking out of your mind, you fucking moron? The fuck is wrong with you? Shit.
Where exactly is the harm or violation of the terms of service here, Twitter? Well, can you find it, friends? If not, don't concern yourselves too much, because I certainly can't either. I would assume it has something to do with telling a black man that his tweets make him feel like he's losing brain cells, but I don't know. Of course, what types of tweets does Tariq make on a daily basis? Why, content such as this, wherein he essentially called black female cosplayers house niggas, to quote Bill Maher,
I'm a house nigga.
or race traders only using cosplay as a way of snagging white males. Yeah, that's not racist at all. Nor is it racist, or at least racist enough to deserve a similar ban from Twitter, to call a South Asian sheik, such as Bunty King, a hapa, aka half-breed, or even full-out a sand nigger.
Watch your profanity.
So long as you're a black man like Tariq Nasheed, of course. Yes, you can say whatever hateful bullshit you like, provided you constantly call everyone around you a white supremacist. Clearly, claiming everyone is a Nazi is endgame tier impenetrable armor to protect yourself against any and all criticism. Are you, my friend, interested in this miracle product? Well, you too can get yourself your own set of Twitter ban evasion tools today! Haha! It is easy. With my patent-pending technique, you too can become an unabashed Twitter racist. First, select your program. For more typically female gender-identifying individuals, you'll receive a spray can of tanning solution and some tight curlers, as well as some dark hair dye, or blonde hair dye, you do you, boo! And for facial hair growing gender identifiers, you'll also receive a guide to styling said facial hair and hairstyle until it resembles a stencil to show your internal racial identification. Once you've completed these steps, you too can go on Twitter and call other people the N-word. Just be sure to claim that no one has ever mistaken you for a white person and you're A-okay. Beyond just being able to use racial epithets, let's look at some other claims that this, outlet, Melanin Nation, has made against Bunty King, so we can better understand how Nasheed's tweets, which to the casual plebeian and, of course, racist viewer, may have come off as significantly more offensive than simply calling a moron, illustrating how the real 90s tier mustache-twirling supervillain in this interaction was in fact the vile white supremacist Bunty King. So let's take a look at this article again from a website called Melanin Nation. Totally not owned and operated by Nasheed himself, if not directly written by him, which, well, I can't confirm because, interestingly enough, the article has no listed author. Always a sign of journalistic rigor and integrity, is it not? This piece describes Bunty King as a white supremacist troll because, of course, this man is without question a white supremacist who wants 1488 to commence soon, as was made evident by his inflammatory claim that white people didn't invent racism. Moreover, it states that despite the brown complexion of his skin, don't be fooled, my friends and fellow Kangs. It is logical for him to be a white supremacist because Indians are all racist. Didn't you know? Excuse me, I need to use the phone for a second to call the entire subcontinent of India to inform them they have all been officially inducted into the Nazi Party because, of course, their caste system is extremely racist. I wouldn't deny that it is racist, by the way. It is a system I find personally objectionable. But it's not one that's being forced onto other cultures or societies. So yeah, you do you. But yes, of course, as we have learned from the Melanin Nation, India is a nation of 1 billion brown white supremacists, including, in fact, Mahatma Gandhi, who the enigmatic anonymous writer of this piece claims is emblematic of the inherent racism of a massive group of people because in the early 1900s, astoundingly, Gandhi was more concerned with the racial equality of his own people, Indians, than native South Africans. But it only starts with the beloved figure of Gandhi, who, as we have now learned, was a horrible racist. We have much more modern examples of Indian white supremacists, such as Dinesh D'Souza, who the author, who could it be, claims built a career on anti-black books. And it doesn't end there either, friends. We can also look to the notorious white supremacist Ian Miles Cheong, who totally wasn't a social justice type just a few years ago or anything, and who writes for the suspected white supremacist outlet Heat Streak, which Tariq, the author states, uses the term black Black Lives Matter in place of black people to spew racist rhetoric. Jesus fucking Christ, Tariq. Can you figure out a new insult outside of white supremacist and racist? You use the phrase white supremacist 12 times in this 440-word article. 3% of your shit piece is just the phrase white supremacist. Stop it. If not only because it's shitty writing, but also because you are absolutely destroying the meaning behind that term, behind the term white supremacist, by redefining it to apply to absolutely anyone you disagree with. Like Bunty King, whose great sin was to laugh at the claim that white people invented racism? Really? Astoundingly, in this very article that totally Tariq Nasheed didn't write, the author, whoever they are, claims that Indians are somehow also intrinsically racist and that their caste system was only exacerbated by whites. So Tariq, if the concept that whites invented racism being laughable is such an overt evidence of racism and white supremacy, why then do I see here someone who absolutely is not you claiming Indians also invented racism against dark-skinned people? You can't even keep your idiotic narrative straight within your own warped brain. But then again, what can I really expect from K-Flex, given he unironically supports the "we was Kangs" narrative bullshit? And if you want to find out the true extent of his idiocy, I highly suggest watching Kraut & T's new and hilarious coverage of this truly woke individual. But Nasheed is really not what I want to talk about in this video, nor Bunty King. What I want to talk about rather is the effect of censorship on the human psyche, and to do that I need to explain the theory of psychological reactance. This theory, first posited by Brehm 1966, describes the state of psychological reactance as motivational arousal, activated when a freedom or perceived freedom is limited or restricted. What the fuck does that mean, Aiden? Well, it means people really dislike not being able to do something, particularly when they know they have the efficacious capacity to do that thing, and when you take away their ability, but not their efficacy. They tend to get very much pissed off, and will do just about anything to restore a lost freedom. The most salient examples can pretty much be observed in children and teenagers. A movie moms said you're not allowed to see suddenly and instantly becomes the thing you want to see the most, right? That's psychological reactance. There are 3 parameters for this effect outside of efficacy itself. First is the expectation of freedom. That is, if I say, sorry fam, but hereby you are eternally banned from becoming a kawaii Japanese schoolgirl. No one's going to get pissed off because that was never a freedom anyone thought they possessed in the first place. Well, maybe someone might get pissed off, but you get my point. No freedom is being restricted in that statement. Secondly, reactance is more or less fervent depending on the strength of the threat. That is, me telling you you can't shitpost in the comment section below might create some reactance, because I guess I could delete all the comments, but I certainly can't stop you from shitposting. And as such, it is a weak threat. Also, probably because everyone knows I love a good shitpost and would never discourage such a thing. Finally, reactance is affected by the importance of the restricted freedom, which is often a highly individualized factor. For most of us, not being able to legally beat the shit out of people who disagree with us politically is probably a freedom we're willing to sacrifice for the greater good, but imagine, in your heart, the importance that that same limitation is on your average Antifa freedom fighter who's just trying to innocently cut some scalps off of the brown and yellow people we've just learned in this Melanoid Nation article were confirmed white supremacist literal Hitlers. Within those parameters, once reactance is activated, those who experience it will try to restore their lost rights in any number of ways. But reactance is generally typified by feelings of hostility and anger. It is enraging to be told what to do, particularly when the one telling you isn't your real dad.
Alright, give him the stick. Don't give him the stick!
You know my dad?
Oh, G.I. Joe!
Typically, individuals experiencing reactance will act out of that hostility and attempt to reclaim their position. However, there is another outcome that research has indicated can occur after the loss of a freedom. That is disengagement and disinterest. This is what I believe the motivation is behind the censorship that we are seeing increasing in frequency in social media. That is, if the market analysts or whoever the fuck is making these decisions know absolutely anything about human psychology, which they sure as hell should since, it's kind of their job, you would think they would understand how psychological reactance works. You might think, wow, how incredibly stupid is it to silence people based on what I've just described as psychological reactance making people react violently to having their freedoms restricted. Well, yeah, I thought that too. But here's the problem. There is also some social psychologically based reasoning that might not end in user revolt. And that is this concept of learned helplessness, and it is what we need to be aware of when we see instances of online censorship of alternative voices. I mentioned earlier the concept of efficacy as being intrinsic to the theory of reactance. For how can we feel a freedom has been lost when we didn't perceive we had the ability to engage in that freedom in the first place? Simply put, self-efficacy is our perception that we can accomplish something. And if we become despondent because it seems our freedom of speech on these platforms is not within our capacity to engage in, we would ask ourselves often, why even try? We lose our self-efficacy. This is what Seligman 1972 describes as learned helplessness. He originally tested this effect on animals and indicated that when you remove any and all efficacy to change a shitty situation, eventually one just tends to give up and falls into a cycle of helplessness. Seligman and his colleagues tested this by administering continual electric shocks to rats and dogs and found that eventually the animals stopped even trying to escape or avoid the shocks. They just accepted it. Yeah, it was the 60s, back before those damn board of ethics had come in to stop our fun. Yeah, fuck you, IRB, I'm getting real motivationally aroused right now that we can't torture animals anymore. Anyway, here's what Seligman, 1975, described as the effect of learned helplessness. A typical dog which has experienced uncontrollable shocks for avoidance training soon stops running and howling and sits or lies, quietly whining until the shock terminates. The dog does not cross the barrier and escape from the shock. Rather, it seems to give up and passively accepts the shocks. On succeeding trials, the dog continues to fail to make escape movements and takes as much shock as the experimenter chooses to give. That's page 851 of his book, which is cited below. This is what the goal is: to create an environment of learned helplessness, to shock us with bans and suspensions until we just roll over and stop posting. And this idea is not without evidence. This recent study that is still in press from foreign users in China, this is Zhang, Wang, and Huang, 2017, found that when speech was censored, the users were less likely to talk openly about a topic that was censored or sign their real names to online petitions. That's the goal here, friends, to get you to stop talking about things publicly. But the real fear I have is the implications of that cessation of public discourse regarding our true opinions. Kuran 1992 posited that when we cease discussing ideas publicly out of fear of censorship, or perhaps it could be out of our learned helplessness, the culture at large forgets those ideas. Concepts become viewed as settled and unquestionable, as the approved of ideas fade into the canon and the unapproved ideas fade into non-extents, and through the function of social proof, others fall into the same self-silencing, the same self-censorship being imposed out of a fear or a sense of helplessness. And that is the goal of these social media giants. That is the goal of the legacy media. That is the goal of these totalitarian globalists, both on the right and the left, that want to destroy free speech because they know that if they stop the free flow of ideas, the wrongthink will eventually disappear until their created knowledge becomes unquestionable. But here's the thing, comrades, this isn't Soviet Russia, and we're not talking about opinions on perestroika in the breadline. This is the internet, motherfucker. This is an entirely different game of underwater interdimensional space checkers. That Zhang, Wang, and Huang article I just mentioned regarding self-censorship, here's a bit I left out. Sure, the users were less likely to post publicly about their beliefs, but when no reasonable justification was given for censorship of topics, they were more likely to sign petitions using fake names, to rely on the concept of anonymity.
No, it's easy to be a fucking faggot like me if you can do it all anonymously.
And is that not what the fuck we're doing right now, friends? So many people are utilizing the pseudonymous nature of the internet to communicate while bypassing censorship in place to do just that. Facebook is a nightmare that I have not used since before the election because it's nothing but former friends crying about Trump. So yeah, guess what? Instead, I'll go shitpost on 4chan like I have for the last decade. You made your platform a den of censorship and horrible normie memes, and as such, I don't use it anymore. Here's an additional study out of Turkey, and excuse me as I butcher these names, Behrouzian, Nisbet, Dal, and Çarkoğlu? Please fucking make fun of me for that. That found when Turkish internet users felt their ability to freely access information was being limited, they experienced what the author specifically described as motivated reactions to censorship, and sought out more political information online. Again, when you limit someone's freedoms, they're going to try and find a way to restore the lost freedoms, so long as they have any efficacy or ability to restore them. Even if it is seemingly as insignificant as an action as anonymously signing a petition or closing your porn tabs for a couple minutes to read a Nazi website like Heat Street. The people are fighting back. That is how psychological reactance works. Is that not what all of us are doing here right now on platforms like YouTube, with tons of political commentators, usually anonymously or pseudonymously, sharing their unapproved opinions in the face of all of this evident censorship as I have described? So as long as we still have any efficacy, any ability to fight back, we will, and we must. We cannot fall into learned helplessness and allow our thoughts to be turned to dust. So I would tell all of you, don't stop shitposting on Twitter or anywhere. Keep supporting whoever you support on YouTube. And you know what? Go make a channel and ensure that this chorus of reactance and dissent cannot be drowned out with the shrill noise of artificial censorship parading as a protection of user rights. Because here's the real rub when it comes down to those who want to use these platforms for politically motivated endgame to ensure only what they deem to be correct thoughts be shared. And knowing I certainly am at risk for considering I have all kinds of wrong thoughts clearly punishable by the government, like thinking it's okay to give food to a woman who lost her free food card.
It's clear from these underground films shot in your bedroom by the Free Food and Drug Administration that you've been doling out unauthorized bread and water to a chick who lost her free food card.
But Senator Baby, like she was starving.
Young man, that's her trip. Take him away for grooving.
Anyway, that was a weird aside. Here is what I'm talking about, and here is their downfall, and once again, it comes from the realm of social psychology. It's not new. No, not in the least. This article from Warshall and Arnold 1971 found that when someone's voice, when their freedom to speak openly was censored, everyone increased in their desire to hear that speech, even if they believed said person was politically opposed to their own beliefs and evaluated that person negatively. This is why I brought up Bunty King. Look at the social blade for his YouTube account. Notice this spike on the 17th, the day he was banned from Twitter. Well, no shit, Twitter, because this research is old as fuck, and you should know better, because this is basic psychological reactance theory. You silence someone, it doesn't matter if they're politically your opposite. Suddenly, anything they have to say becomes more valuable in the political sphere. It becomes more valuable socially, precisely because their freedom to hear it has been denied. Banning Milo from Twitter was the most meteoric rise in popularity he probably ever had, just as every single instance of him being banned from speaking on public campuses has been. You mental invalids, throwing a fit about Ann Coulter speaking at your college? Guess what? It makes her ideas more appealing because you're restricting the freedoms and inciting psychological reactance. You people are actually making others want to listen to Gavin McInnes, for fuck's sake. And that is precisely why I oppose any censure of free speech, and why I think we absolutely should allow people like Linda Sarsour to spread her disgusting Takia lies on campuses, because to silence is to make those words arcane and mystical, and even though it is mostly right-leaning opinions being silenced, we need to learn from psychology, if not just from our basic human dignity, that freedom of speech should be intrinsic to our values, and not to ever silence people just because we disagree with them. It's not working. We are not learning to be helpless. We are becoming incensed and finding ways to work around these restrictions, both online and off. Frankly, social media outlets like Twitter and Facebook, you're fucked. Shit posters will always shit post. People will always find a way to access information and disseminate it. Has WikiLeaks and this past US election cycle not made that abundantly clear? This is the power of psychological reactance. The more you restrict us, the more we want to do the exact opposite. The more you silence dissenting opinions, the more attractive those opinions become. Forget about beating us down into submission until we take our own proverbial lashes without question or retaliation. Even if it really does somehow become the case that public discourse in this country or across the world becomes silenced, the Pandora's box we call the World Wide Web has long since been opened, and no longer can the shitstorm of free speech that is the internet be so easily contained or controlled. If you ever feel disincentivized to speak your mind out of fear of censorship, just reach inside yourself and find that anticipatory reactance, that motivational arousal to resist. And resist, because that is human nature. Psychological reactance is one of the most human emotions we can possibly experience. It is native to humanity. Do not allow your ideas and your beliefs to go quietly into the good night as these censors are so deeply desiring of. Find the rage of reactance that is humans in our perpetual desire to maintain our rights to do whatever the fresh hell we feel like. Find that rage and express yourself. It doesn't matter if you think literally everyone is a white supremacist and melanin is a superpower, or if you just want to make an innocent little Hitler did nothing wrong tweet. I don't care what you want to say. It's your right to say it. Speak out, say your mind, and say your piece, and make sure you encourage others to do the same. Because psychological reactance is the thorn in the side of those who seek censorship. So turn that thorn, twist it just a little bit deeper, any chance you get. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. I'm Aiden Paladin, Alt Volt.